Hi VC, it's Aaron with the Elamare. Today I'm entering a contest for my good friend Robert Hagerman, who is just a great guy. I love his channel, and we've become friends, and he's a really cool guy. And he has a contest showing, you're supposed to show 5 bands that have had like lineup changes and tell which one you like the best. So I got 5 here, and there's a bunch of records, so I'm going to get going here. And so first off, I'm going to start with this band. This is Journey. And to start off, they had they were a 4-piece, and Greg Raleigh was the lead singer, who came from Santana. Neil Schon and him both came from Santana. So Greg Raleigh was the singer on the first 3 Santana albums. And the early Journey is much different. It's very progressive, way different sound. It's not the pop rock that you're used to hearing with Journey. It's very progressive, very good stuff. And this is their first album here. And then they had 2 others with this lineup. This one here, and Journey next. And there's the band there. And, you know, it's got Greg Raleigh, Ross Valerie, the bass player, Ansley Dunbar, and Neil Schon on the guitar. So this is the original Journey lineup, and it's very, like I said, very progressive, way different. And they actually have a compilation called In the Beginning, which is a compilation of songs just from those albums, which is really cool. And so after a bit, they ended up getting Steve Smith on the drums, who's a great drummer, and of course Steve Perry on vocals. So him and him and Greg Raleigh split vocal duties for the first couple records that they were with. And it was really good. And then, you know, Steve Perry took over, and they put out these albums. I'm not going to show every one of theirs. They have so many records. And then like Frontiers, and there's the lineup there, which is the lineup I just told about. And they're very, they went more of a pop rock sound, had all their huge hits. And then eventually, Ross Valerie left for a bit. And on this record, they actually had Randy Jackson from American Idol fame, one of the judges, played bass on this. Kind of cool. And so they went from their progressive sound to their more pop rock sound, which made them super popular. And of course, they've gone on and done stuff after this, but I don't have any of that stuff with the other singer. They've had numerous lineup changes after that. But of these 2 main lineups they had, I actually prefer this lineup the best, the original. Before Steve Perry got there, the progressive is just so good. And that's what I prefer for Journey, is the very early first 3 records. And I do like the Steve Perry era as well. And their modern era is good too, with their new singers they've had. And so there we go. That's my first one, is Journey. And that's going to be my roughest. The rest of them I know a lot better. So next up, I have one of my favorite bands, and they're called Caius. And first off, they start off as Sons of Caius here. This is their first EP. And what this is a Palm Springs desert, they call it stoner rock band, one of the originators of that sound. And the lead singer is John Garcia, and Josh Homme was the lead guitarist, who went on to be in Queens of the Stone Age, Them Crooked Vultures, Eagles of Death Metal, and and then Brant Bjork on the drums. That's the main core of the band. And they've had a few different bass players. Nick Oliveri was the original bass player, and he's on the first couple records, and he's great. And so after this, they put out this album called Wretch, their first real major release. And this is an excellent record. It sounds a bit different, it's a bit more raw and rough than their later work, which is more of almost a progressive stoner metal. Just really killer stuff. But they still have that same lineup on here. And then also on their big breakout album, Blues for the Red Sun, which had Green Machine and Thumb, and, you know, just a great, great album here. The Thong Song is amazing. I just love that. Caterpillar March, Freedom Run. This is just such an amazing record. And so after this record, they got Scott Reeder to play bass, and he came in and they created this masterpiece, Welcome to Sky Valley. And so this is a really good album here, Sky Valley. It's in three parts instead of a bunch of songs. So when you get it like on CD, it'll just be in 3 parts. It'll be part 1 is 3 songs here, part 2 and part 3, which is really unique and very cool. And this album is just so amazing. And then finally their last studio album they did was this, And the Circus Leaves Town, which is an amazing record as well. So they broke up, went on and on, had a bunch of legal battles back and forth between Josh Homme and the rest of the band, and eventually they reformed, and without Josh Homme, and they had a different bass player, but it was still the core of John Garcia and Brant Bjork, and they had to change their name for legal reasons, but it's really Caius. And they put out this album under the name Vistacino, and it's Peace, and this is an amazing, sounds just like a Caius record, because it is Caius basically, but they, for legal reasons, had to change their name to Vistacino. And this is just one of my favorite records of the last decade. Amazing stuff. And of course, I'm going to prefer probably the original era the best, but that whole first 4 albums is just so amazing, and they're all good. Vistacino is just as good. So that's my preference, though, is those core 4 records they did. Next up, I've got another one of my favorite bands, and when this album came out here, it totally changed my whole musical perspective. I mean, everyone calls Nirvana, says they're the ones that really did it. I think it was really this album here, Allison Chains' Facelift, kind of helped change the face of everything. Then Nirvana came a little bit later, and it really changed a bit more. But this is a much more heavy, they're grunge, but they're like almost a metal grunge. And but they've got a lot of different styles. And it's Allison Chains, of course. And of course, the original lineup was Lane Staley on vocals, Jerry Cantrell on the guitar, Sean Kinney on the drums, and Mike Starr on the bass. And this is one of my favorite albums of all time, Facelift. Had We Die Young, Man in the Box, Sea of Sorrow, Sunshine, all those great songs. And it's just an amazing, amazing record. So after that, they put out a heavy, heavy album. After that, they put out this acoustic album, Sap, which was very odd, and it showed their versatility. Still the same lineup. So, and then after Sap, they got a new bass player, Mike Inez, took him from, I think, Ozzy's band, and put out this amazing album, Dirt. And Dirt is their most commercially successful. It's an amazing record. I prefer Facelift, but Dirt is amazing as well. And just an amazing, amazing record with the Roosters on here and Wood and Angry Chair and Them Bones. Amazing stuff. And then again, they put out another acoustic record, Jar of Flies. And this album was very successful as well. Really good stuff here too. And so they were going on, and then finally they put out this Unplugged record. So after this, the singer Lane Staley, he died from an overdose, which really sucked. He was 33 years old, one of my favorite singers ever. And so they got a new singer and put this record out. And they still sound like Allison Chains, but of course it sounded different because Lane Staley wasn't there. And this is a really good record though too. And killer stuff. And all the way, they put out a few albums all the way up to this amazing record called Rainier Fog, which is very highly underrated, great album. And, it still sounds like Allison Chains, but it just doesn't quite have that same feel because of Lane Staley's vocal style and his harmonies. But to me, I prefer, of course, the original Allison Chains. That's just my favorite. It's one of my favorite eras of music ever is their output they did there. So my next band up, I'm going to go with one of my other favorite bands. This is Anthrax, and they've had many, many changes. Starting with this record when it was Neil Turbin on vocals, the only album he did vocals on. Then you have Scott Ian on guitar, Dan Spitz on guitar, Dan Lilker on bass, and Charlie Benante on drums. So this is the only album with this lineup. After that, they went to Joey Belladonna on the vocals and Frank Bello on the bass and put this out. And this is one of the best thrash metal albums of all time. It's so good. Every song on this is amazing. They put out a string of them, that one, and Among the Living with this lineup, the same lineup. Then they even did this rap album, I'm the Man. It's kind of interesting. And, State of Euphoria, all the way up to Persistence of Time with that lineup. And that's basically the classic Anthrax lineup. So, after Persistence of Time, they went and got another singer, got rid of Joey Belladonna, and got John Bush from Armored Saint to take over vocals and put this album out. And their sound changed from more of a thrash to more of like just a straight metal with some thrash leanings, more groove oriented. Really great stuff. I love this era too with John Bush. And they've had a couple of other lineup changes all the way, and they went up to this album with John Bush as We've Come For You All. And then as they were getting ready to change, they also put this album out, The Greater of Two Evils, which is John Bush singing all the Joey Belladonna and Neil Turbin era songs, which is really cool too. So after that, they got John Bush left. They've had another guitarist in the band. The rest of them have all pretty much stayed. And got Joey Belladonna back, and then put out this amazing record, Worship Music, one of my favorite records of the last 10 years again. This is just an amazing record. And they've now put out this one, an album called Anthems, which is cover songs, and For All Kings with the newer lineup, which is amazing as well. But for me, my favorite will always be this classic lineup from this era. It's just, where I discovered them, and I think it's their best albums. Even though I like their whole catalog, that's all good. Which brings me up to the monster of these. And, of course, I'm going to do this band because it's my second favorite band. My favorite band has never had a lineup change, or I would have put them in, but this is Kiss. And so, Kiss started out, of course, with Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Peter Criss, and Ace Frehley, of course. And this lineup went, and they put out all these amazing records. I'm just going to show a few. Like, they put out Alive, Destroyer, and this is the classic 70s hard rock Kiss sound. This had a very unique, raw sound at the beginning. And that lineup went all the way up to Unmasked, although Peter Criss didn't play really on this album, but he was still credited. So, all the way from 74 to 1980 with Unmasked. And then after that, Peter Criss was kicked out, left, whatever, and they got Eric Carr on the drums, who's my favorite drummer. And this was his first album, which is very odd for a debut album to be. But I love Music from the Elder, and this has the lineup of Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley, and Eric Carr. And then they also put out this greatest hits with a few new songs. There's the 4 there. And it ended with Creatures of the Night, which ended up being, Ace wasn't on it a lot, but still it's this lineup. So after that lineup, they got Ace Frehley left, and they brought in Vinnie Vincent for one album. So then Vinnie Vincent's on here. And then for the next album, they had another guitarist, Mark St. John, on Animalize. And then this lineup here actually was together for the longest up to that point. This here they got Bruce Kulick on guitar, starting with Asylum. And Bruce Kulick is such an amazing, underrated guitarist. This is their heaviest period, probably, where they're just full-on, metal with a few pop-style hits mixed in. But they're just great. And then that went all the way up to Hot in the Shade with this lineup. And unfortunately, after Hot in the Shade, the drummer Eric Carr died from cancer. And so they had to replace him on this record with Eric Singer. And Eric Singer's on drums, starting with Kiss Revenge. So then you got Bruce Kulick, Gene Paul, and Eric Singer. And this is an amazing comeback record kind of for them, when it looked like they weren't going to be around much longer. And then they put out like Carnival of Souls, which I really love. A lot of people don't, but I think it's a great heavy album. And then they went back to the original 4 lineup for this record, Psycho Circus. Kind of odd. And then after that, they brought Eric Singer back on the drums and got Tommy Thayer from Black and Blue to put out these 2 records. So, my favorite era of Kiss. Now, most people go with the original lineup, but my favorite era of Kiss is this lineup here. And they were only together for a couple of records, but it's Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Eric Carr on the drums, and Ace Frehley. That's my favorite lineup of Kiss. I just love this lineup. I mean, I love the original as well. I love the Bruce Kulick stuff. I love it all. But this, for this short period of time, for a couple of years, was my favorite lineup. It's just, Eric Carr is my favorite drummer. Ace Frehley is my favorite guitarist, so that's where I lean towards. All right, Robert. Pretty cool contest you got here. And, all right, I'll see you later. Have a good one.